Authorities say I got 30 days to fix it. And I'll get into that in a bit, or I guess I'll progress into that as I go along in this video. I've told you in the past that this firewood should last me 15 years. I got 15 cords, I use about a cord a year. One of the biggest complaints I get, I don't know if it's complaint, but disagreement I get, is there's no way this firewood's gonna last 15 years. Well, I know for a fact it will last for 15 years. There was a stack of firewood down in the woods. The guy said he owned this place since the 90s, and the guy I bought it from, he said it was down there before he bought it. I used it, I burned it. It was perfectly good firewood. It was covered up with a piece of metal. Now, the bottom pieces that were on the ground, they were pretty decayed. I couldn't use those, but everything on top was just fine. So what are we talking? 25, 30 years for that firewood. This oak will last a very long time, as long as it's stacked up, covered up. I'll get to that in a minute. Another reason I think it's gonna last a very long time is my grandmother had a barn, and it was oak logs. It had been there for 100 years. I mean, it had been there forever when she bought the property. She knocked it down and used it for firewood. So I'm sure that this is gonna last a very long time. Now, one thing you have to understand is oak takes forever to dry to get it down to 20%. There's some wood here that's almost 3 years old and it's still struggling to dry out. Things that have bark on it all the way around, like this one here, will struggle to dry. It's not gonna rot if it's still trying to dry out. I do need to cover it. I agree with that. And I've tried tarps and different things and nothing's worked. Now people will say, oh, you need to build a building. Well, I gotta build a building means I gotta spend more money. And remember, I'm trying to save money. That's where I'm gonna go with this video and the authorities and all that. If I wanted to spend $1 billion, then my YouTube channel would have probably 2 or 3 million viewers also. If you look at the bigger YouTubers, they spend massive amounts of money to live in relative comfort and then say they're off grid. You know, everything's manicured. I mean, they've spent a lot of money. So I'm trying to teach folks how to live off grid and live your dreams on a budget, something realistic. I mean, you have a mortgage right now, you gotta figure out how to get rid of the mortgage. I mean, I've had people email me, tell me, what am I supposed to do? How do I do this? Well, first thing you gotta do is get debt free. If you're trying to get a loan to have a mansion on an off-grid property and $30,000 or $40,000 worth of solar panels, you're not really self-reliant because you're relying on someone else to buy your property for you. Tarps, they are degrading, obviously, and I didn't know what to do about it because I didn't want to keep investing in tarps either. So I don't want to build a building, don't want to keep investing in tarps. What I found though is on the chicken coop, we put white tarps on it. And the reason I put white tarps on it was to kind of reflect the sunlight off the chickens. Well, those tarps are over 2 years old now. They work fantastic. They don't degrade. I got one on top of the camper and I got one on the chicken coop. So I'm going to invest in white tarps and put it on the wood pile. I mean, apparently the white doesn't degrade in the UV, which is what the big problem is the UV just degrades these tarps. Even if they say UV resistant, they don't really resist very long. So that'll get them covered back up and it'll be a pretty cheap solution to a problem that I gotta get this covered. I mean, I absolutely understand that. So folks that send nasty comments telling me that I shouldn't be providing misinformation. You need to be responsible and do your research. Well, I have done my research. It's you that didn't do the research. But people don't do their research and then argue with you. All you gotta do is Google it. It tells you how to do things. Google has all the information in the world. So my perspective on my happiness isn't that I have a manicured place. If you will take a look at my first video, and I'll put a little clip here of my first video off grid here. As you can see, it's all weighted over. This is the trailer. It's a mobile home that has been demolished. So anyway, we're gonna strip this all the way down to the frame. What I find so interesting is they make these trailers out of 2x2s. So tomorrow, I'll spend my day in this spot. This is the well. I've showed you the well in previous videos before. But over on this side, lots of trash. This is gonna be kind of dangerous this summer. Okay, so this is the other side of the trailer. You saw there that the place was an absolute disaster. And I've cleaned this up massively. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. We still got metal and garbage here. This is the original stuff that came from the property. I mean, we got barbed wire everywhere. Down here, you'll see that we still have a bunch of metal that we got to pick up. People complain that my solar panel's on the ground. Now, I've explained that many times, that it stays cooler in the summer on the ground. I've got one of those laser thermometers. The cooler the solar panels, the more volts it produces. So when it starts to get over like 70 or 75 degrees, there's an actual mathematical equation that tells you how many volts you lose per degree. So I keep them on the ground and they seem to stay cooler. Is it nasty or trashy? Yeah, it's nasty and trashy. You know, the weeds grow up around it, and I don't have a weed whacker, and I'm not going to weed whack around my solar panels. Could end up clipping them and hurting them. I've got my camper here, my homemade camper, and that's disgusting looking. And of course I got the chicken coop, and that's terrible. But what I don't understand is, why do we want to invest a bunch of money? I mean, let's look at egg prices. Egg prices are through the roof right now. I mean, I'm seeing memes, people holding eggs. Make me an offer. Don't lowball me. I know what I got. And so we got a bunch of colored eggs up there. We got 10 right now. We eat our eggs as they're being produced. So if we have too many eggs, we have eggs for supper. We always have eggs for lunch. But one of the things people always said when I started working towards getting the chicken coop is, you spend $1 million to get $5 worth of eggs. You spend a bunch of money to get chickens, and it doesn't really replace your food cost. Well, if you're buying eggs to eat for breakfast, no, chicken eggs are not worth it. But if you do it the way we did it, and our chicken eggs replaced our bread and our peanut butter, because I was eating bread and peanut butter every day for lunch, and that was costly. The bread is what, $2 or $3 a loaf? Peanut butter is like $5 a jar, whatever it is. And you could go through a jar of peanut butter in a couple of weeks, several loaves of bread. So the eggs replaced the peanut butter costs. You got to look at it that way. But if I spend a bunch of money on my chicken run just so it looks better, then I'm not saving any money. I just will go get the eggs from the store, even though they're really expensive. My whole point is try to be self-sufficient, and the only way I know how to do that is work within my budget. So I want to be happy and not be stressed, not have to get a high-paying job so I can pay for my $20,000 chicken coop. Because if I built it the way people think I should build it, that's probably what it would cost. Well, maybe $10,000. And then I got to cover up the firewood. There's another $10,000. And then also you got to think, once these structures get big enough, you got to get building permits. Code inspectors, they're going to be out here snooping and doing their things. You don't want all these eyeballs on you. You want to be self-sufficient. Keep them away from you. Are the chickens going to be any happier in a $10,000 building versus my, well, I guess this ended up being about $300. And my answer is no. They're no more happy. That's why we built a tiny house. What I find interesting is the tiny house I'm very proud of. It's our new home. Think about that. It's new, brand new home. Not everybody in the world gets to say, my home, well, is now, what, 3 years old? I think this is our 3rd year here. Regardless, not everybody gets to say that. Usually you have to buy a home. It's a secondhand house. Somebody else built it, several decades old. Mine's brand new. But I get a lot of comments saying, oh, you should do something trashy. Close in the porch. Well, no, we wanted the porch open so we could sit out on the porch and enjoy the spring air and fall air. Or they'll say, just park a camper there. They'll say a lot of things to make it even more trashy than what it is. So there's conflicting comments. What I would suggest is do what you can afford. If you think that you're going to come out here and be like the YouTubers that have millions of subscribers, well, I can tell you they make a lot of money. I know there's this one YouTuber who actually hires people to help him do his thing. So if your expectation is you're going to come out here, live off grid, and you're going to have hired hands that split your firewood for you and stack it up and do everything, keep it nice and neat so you can have this fantasy dream, it's probably not realistic. It's not realistic for me. The reason they do this is specifically for YouTube. They keep everything spotless, they keep everything fancy so they can get views. I've talked about this before. There are YouTubers out there that make this lifestyle look so difficult. They've got sheep and goats and chickens, cows, and pigs, and they got it all. And they're constantly busy, they're constantly working, and they're always building something. There's a big project going on. I mean, there's this one YouTuber who calls themselves off-grid, but they should call themselves a construction channel. Most of the time that I have watched them, I don't watch them all the time, they're building something. New garage, a new shed, a new house, they're just constantly building. It gets views, don't get me wrong, they get lots of views, but it also gives you a misguided perspective on what off-grid's about. If you're having to go out there and work from sun up to sundown, taking care of animals, well, remember, they're doing it for YouTube. They want you to live vicariously through them, so you give them views. Now, you can say that that's what I'm trying to do, and yeah, I guess there's an aspect of what I'm trying to do is I'd like to get views. I mean, I really would. But in the end, I'm not getting views because I live within my means. And so people aren't that interested. But this is kind of the reality. My grandma, I remember my grandma, she had 5 acres. She lived not off-grid, but definitely more rustic than what normal society did even back then. And her place was far from immaculate. Grass was usually waited for me. When I was a kid, I lived at my mom's house, and then on the weekends I'd go down to Dad's house, and Grandma would take care of us sometimes, and she'd wait for me to come out and cut the grass. Of course, I like to cut the grass, so I get on the riding lawnmower and I cut the yard. So I mean, the grass is always growing up, and it wasn't manicured. If you're having this expectation that you're going to be able to do all these things, take care of all these animals and build a big extravagant building, having these beautiful barns to put your firewood in instead of white tarps, it's an unrealistic dream and one that you will never accomplish. It can't be done. Carolyn and I are talking about this all the time. How is it that these guys on YouTube are doing it? Well, we know that one has helping hands. If you go back in my videos, you will see that everything we've done here, we've done by ourselves, me and Carolyn. Now, Carolyn's never on video, admittedly, but you will see that I built a house by myself. So these commenters that tell me that if I lived in their neighborhood, they'd be calling the authorities on me, giving me a 30-day notice to clean the place up. If they want to live in those fancy places, that's fine. But you can't have that expectation when you come out here. I remember when I moved out here, my neighbor came down and said, "Don't you be bringing that HOA out here." Completely understand what he means. You go up to his place, he's got metal scrapyard that he cashes in every couple of years. Big, huge pile of firewood laying out in his parking lot. Junk cars laying around that he's working on. Let him be. So if you click this up next box to take you to a video that I made yesterday. So I hope I can inspire you to lower your expectations so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.